Good evening. Hi, I'm Jay. For years I recorded under All Hallows Evil. It's been about a year since I recorded because, due to some unfortunate life evolutions, my studio's in storage right now. I had a Digi-002 going into a desktop computer, 2 external hard drives, a bunch of outboard effects and things like that, and it's not really feasible for my living situation right now. So I took a little time off, wrote a book, which I'm sure you'll hear plenty about later. But I also, due to the unfortunate life evolutions, can't really have a lot of books around. I love to read comic books, and they are heavy and large, and they take up a lot of space, and I own a lot of them, so those are in storage too. To solve both these problems, I bought an iPad, or I charged an iPad, depending on how you want to look at that. Well, I guess it really doesn't depend at all. I charged it. I didn't pay anything for it yet. We'll see if I do. I will. So I decided to see if we could get some recording done on that. It was, a first-time thing, so it was a process. But I'd like to take you through it. Okay, so when we open GarageBand, this is what we get. You get all the files that you've made. I come up with dumb names for them to differentiate them between the types that they are, because this went through a couple different variations. I actually started this song on my iPhone using the PV amp link here, which we'll talk about in a second. It's kind of a technical achievement that GarageBand runs on an iPhone for, but to actually use it on that little screen and do edits and things like that does not quite match my style. I have kind of crazy clubbed fingers. I've got cystic fibrosis, which is it's a lung disease. It makes my fingers look like ET is the point of it right now. It's also the reason I have this screen cover on here, and you can see I've poorly applied it. But that's because I do a saltwater treatment every day, and I don't want to just spit salt water at the iPad, saltwater mist at the iPad for like half an hour. But anyway, enough about that. You'll read about that in the book. So, I think the earliest version I still have, because somehow my inexperience with iCloud led me to delete a version of this that I didn't mean to. I was trying to delete something from just my phone, and I took it out from everything. The earliest version I have, I think, disregard the dates on there, because I've gone through and changed some of these. We're going to go to Tether's copy 2. And you'll see this, all these guitars right here are all recorded with the amp link, which just plugs right into the headphone jack on your iPhone and or iPad. Guitar goes in there, headphones go in there. It's powered, so it comes on and it's got a feedback detection circuit in there that's supposed to kill feedback and noise. It is a little noisy, but it worked. And it made it to the final track. It was good enough that I didn't feel like re-recording it with the setup that we'll talk about later. But you see, like, you just go back in. These drums are done right on the iPad, just pounding right on the screen, which I don't feel worked that well for me. So I didn't use that in the final. We'll talk about that in a second. But, it's a usable song. This is an early version that had piano that I ended up not using. And what's great about GarageBand is you can take these tracks, and let's say we wanted to merge them together, because they're basically the same track. You would select them, and then you hit merge, and it brings them together. And we're not going to do it now, because I've already done it like 5 times. And it makes a great copy of it for you here. You'll see Tether's final copy, or whatever I did there. My issue is whenever you exit, and you just saw that, it automatically saves what you did. So you have to remember to undo everything that you didn't mean to do before you get out. I'm used to just closing things in disgust. You can't do that on the iPad. If you close it in disgust, it's going to keep what you did anyway. Or you can't do that in GarageBand anyway. So I ended up not liking the guitars that were in GarageBand itself. If you see, all these amp simulations are directly from GarageBand. So I ended up going and getting Amplitude, which I think does work great. Unfortunately, it just shows as Amplitude every time I use it. And I used Audio Bus to bring that in, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Alright, so we're going to open up Audio Bus, and you'll see we're not going to play Robot Unicorn Attack or Crazy Taxi right now, but we go to Audio Bus, which if you're not using this to record on the iPad, you're probably doing it wrong. I like to start with what we're going to use for the input. Like, we're going to use Amplitude to bring the sound in. And we'll tap to launch Amplitude, and we'll wait. The little Audio Bus thing shows in the corner. We want to bring Amplitude into GarageBand. So we'll do that. We tap to launch GarageBand. And these things are now lovingly connected. So let's go back to Amplitude for a second. And we'll see, I think the preset I used was, I think it might even been one of their presets that I liked and maybe rolled the gain off of a little bit. So I just plugged the amp kit right into the headphone jack on the iPad, plug the guitar in there, and then you go to the little Audio Bus thing over here, and we'll go back to GarageBand, and we'll open up, I already recorded Amplitude on most of these, so you'll see right there, when you go into Audio Recorder, you'll hit that, double tap that, and it'll open it up. You can add effects to it. Now, if you haven't recorded anything, it will tell you that there's an outside app running that you can record audio from. And I did all the guitars in that. And then I ended up, I use a lot of tracks when I record. So I merged a lot. Like, if you'll see, there's 4 rhythm tracks on here, and I brought them down to 2. And then I ended up bringing everything together so I could get 7 tracks of vocals on there as well. But before we get to that, we need to talk about how we did the drums here, which we've got a little bit of right here. I don't like the sound of the live rock kit. A little too clean for what I wanted to do here. And the other kits, I mean, there's other kits as well, Classic Studio. It's tough to add effects to these kits. You've got to make them audio, it's a process. So I ended up, I'm still searching for drum apps. I don't really like the solution I came up with. I audio bust in a program called DM1, which we'll talk about. I picked a trashier snare because I was so fed up with the clean snares on this that I decided I want a little grit on something. I think I went too far, but it was enough that I didn't feel like replacing it afterwards. But we'll talk about DM1 in a second here